and this will be for our YouTube upload. So yeah, welcome everyone to Lancashire LGBT's 4th Mental Health Hour episode, and we're really excited about tonight. It's also to celebrate Black History Month. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Obviously keep your mics off and your cameras off, please. It'll just be myself and the speakers who will have ours on. We've also got Craig doing our BSL interpreting for us tonight, so thank you so much for joining us, Craig. If anyone needs that service, it's there. And yeah, obviously there's just a zero tolerance policy to make clear about any type of homophobia, transphobia, or sexism or racism. We don't tolerate that in the space. So if that happens to occur, you'll be removed from the space. We've got Lewis, who's monitoring our chat for tonight. So if you've got any comments or questions to pop in there at any point, Lewis will be able to answer them for you. And yeah, I think that's everything. Just to introduce the project as well, Lancashire LGBT, we're obviously a charity based in Lancashire, working with people on the whole host of the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And this mental health hour is basically an opportunity for us to look deeper as to why LGBTQ plus people have different experiences of mental health and the different intersections that come with that. So far we've had 3 episodes, they've gone really well. And like I said, this is our 4th one. And we're really, really happy that we get to do it to celebrate Black History Month as well and look at those intersections of race and queer identities. So without further ado, I'd really like to introduce our guest speakers for this evening. We've got Tolu Ajayi and Cheryl Martin. So usually I do introduction, but because these 2 people are so brilliant and wear that many hats, we thought it might be better just to hand it over and just give it to yourselves to give a proper introduction of all the different projects that you're involved with. So can we come to you first, Cheryl? Oh, you're just on mute. The classic.
After 2 years, I'm still doing that.
People
still trying to talk while I'm on mute. So hello, everybody. My name's Cheryl Martin, and I'm a sort of medium brown, sort of roundish Black woman with about middle-aged as well, with right now sort of like a halo of curls around my hair. I'm wearing a royal blue sleeveless dress, and in the background you can see some flowers and a nice Ghanaian painting, and my couch, which is teal blue. And I'm the co-artistic director of 2 Black-led arts organizations here in Manchester, Common Word, which is an arts council, regularly funded, Black grassroots publisher literary organization, which is 40 years old, or more like 42 now, and Black Gold Arts, which is much younger, and that is a multidisciplinary Black and LGBTQIA+, or QTPOC, which is a way of talking about queer and intersex and trans people of color. We do multidisciplinary festivals. It's just ending now. A non-binary young emerging artist named Mandla Ray just did a wonderful show called British as a Watermelon, and it was great. It was the first time I didn't realize it was the first time they've ever performed to an audience, because they are emerging, and the pandemic meant that they didn't do that until this week. So that was wonderful to be part of. And I think that, and I'm also an independent writer and stuff, but that's enough for now.
Okay, I'll hand over to Tolu now. Thanks, Cheryl.
Hi everybody, and hi everybody watching. My name's Tolu Ajayi. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a Black man. I have a septum ring. That's the first thing I think people see that goes right in my nose, and it's rainbow iridescent metal, and I love it very much. I've got gold glasses on. I've got kind of like a dark chocolate skin, a beard that probably is a little bit too unkempt, and a top knot which is full of purples and burgundies. It's twists, and I'm not going to tell you how much of it is my hair and how much of it is not. That's just widespread speculation. I'm in a white hoodie, which is from the Spider-Verse. I love Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen, and my background is as chaotic as my creativity. but organized chaos. I have a piano in the back with some piano-based games on top of it, and the trans flag and the LGBT flag, and a flag from Amnesty which says love is a human right. So that's my visual description. A bit about me. Yeah, I'm Nigerian blooded but British born, Manchester based. I've always been in the Northwest. I'm a freelance artist and performer, so mainly versed in music, but I've had little dips in film and theatre and TV. We'll talk a little bit about that later, I'm sure, me and Cheryl. Read my music, I front a soul band called Pieces of a Man. So we are a 6-piece soul and soundscape collective signed to True Thoughts Record in Brighton. And that's kind of, I sing and I play keyboards for that and for several different other projects. But with regards to activism, I co-lead a group called Rainbow Noir. We'll talk about them later. It's again celebrating and platforming LGBTQI people of colour. I work for LGBT Foundation as the Cutie Pop Programme Coordinator, so that's around engagement and representation of queer, trans and intersex people of colour. And there's a bunch of other projects which I think we'll get into later when we talk about creativity, but it's all my work, or the majority of my work is geared towards the celebration, elevation and advocacy for LGBTQIA people of colour. Me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thanks for reminding me to do my audio description. So I've got red glasses on, long brown curly hair, gold hoops in, a sort of khaki t-shirt on, and my background is got Lancashire LGBT's logo, LGBTQ plus, oh no, the wrong way, LGBTQ plus mental health hour on one side and that on the other. So thanks for that. Okay, well, let's get into our discussion then, hey? So we want to talk about Black LGBTQ plus mental health, but specifically with yourselves and both your backgrounds, how creative approaches to it are navigated through your artistic projects. And yeah, I suppose I'll open that up initially just to, if you want to explain what that kind of looks like for you, what that means to you, and how that's like, you know, over the years, and what's the journey been with that. So I can come to you first, Cheryl, if you'd like.
Okay. All right. Is the sound okay? Because I hear
a
rumble.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I started off as a performance poet years ago at Common Word, and my poetry has always been about my mental health experience since I was 8 years old. I've had very severe depression, and I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when I was 27. And I used to try to keep the inner chaos basically hidden. I was sort of in the closet. I never had any trouble coming out as lesbian. I had a lot of trouble talking about my mental health in public. And it wasn't until I got some actual good therapy for the borderline personality thing, and Common Word also offered to publish my first collection. And I thought I'll use a little bit of their money to get more money and make a show out of my poems. And when I laid all the poems out end to end, my director, who's Darren Pritchard, who's also my co-artistic director for Black Gold Arts, he said, tell me about the poems, you know, what was going on. And when I finished, he said, what was going on in your life will make a better show. And so I made my first solo show as a writer performer called Alaska. And that was about growing up with very severe depression, self-harm, attempting suicide, ending up in an asylum because I'm so old they were still around. And sort of how did I come out of that? And then my other two shows, solo shows, were also about my own mental health, experiences. The last one, One Woman, was done with Unlimited. I don't know if you know Unlimited. They give great big commissions to disabled people because my mental health is bad enough that I'm disabled with a PIP and everything, personal independence payment. And COVID came along. COVID came along, so I turned it into a film. And it's not a film of a stage play. We never made the stage play. So this is an original film. And if Alaska was about growing up with severe mental health problems or issues, then One Woman is why did I grow up like that? And it's, due to childhood sexual abuse and the aftermath. And it was interesting because during the pandemic, I realized now I get most severely depressed when I'm doing the shows. And so and there's an issue among a lot of Black artists right now about why can't we talk about Black joy rather than Black trauma? And I did my shows because I never saw anybody like me, older, lesbian, disabled on stage, talking for ourselves, not having people talk about how hard it was to live with somebody with mental health issues, but me talking for myself about my own experience. And I find that, especially when I do Alaska, which is the only one I've been able to do, but that after every show, practically, someone comes up and says they have the same problems as me. And it's usually young women in their 20s. And I remember when I did it at Edinburgh, this one young Black girl came up and whispered in my ear afterwards that she was just like me, but she had never told anybody and she'd never seen anybody else. And that's why I do the shows. I might hand them over to actors now to do, but it's actually that. And I still feel like we don't get seen and heard enough. And other people need to know you can survive it. When you're in your 20s, when I was in my 20s, I just felt like I was the only one and I had nobody to talk to because my family didn't want to know. And again, there's loads and loads of LGBTQIA plus people who have mental health issues for various reasons. And it's it depends, I'm in Manchester, that's lucky for me. I don't feel like I have to be in the closet or anything, but just imagine if you were having trouble with your family or you were having trouble with your housing. As an older person, there's an issue now, like I live in sheltered accommodation actually, and there's an issue about people feeling like they have to go back in the closet when they go into a care home or when they go into sheltered accommodation because they're scared of what they think older people are going to think or the attitudes that they find there. They feel it's safer to be back in the closet. And so think about all the pressures that are on people right now, coming out of the pandemic, living on your own. And then you're also going to have, depression or personality disorder or whatever. It's just another turn of the screw, isn't it? So I feel like we need to get, and what I also found as a Black artist was that when I started talking about my mental health, a whole bunch of other Black artists that I'd known for years and didn't realize, they started saying that they were also having trouble with their mental health. And in a way, it's a virtuous cycle. And people have started making more shows about it. But and just at work, Common Word, I'd say that at one point, half the staff as well were having mental health issues. And we were lucky enough to have basically a queer psychiatric social worker as part of our staff, but that person's moved on now. So we're gonna have to ask the Arts Council to get a well-being officer whose job is to look after the staff and to look after our participants and our writers and audiences. So I'll stop now because I've gone on for quite a while.
No, that was all incredibly interesting, and thank you for sharing so much and being so open and honest there. I'll come to you now, Tolu, if you want to speak to, similarly to as Cheryl's done there, about your journey with mental health and your artistic endeavours to try and heal those problems.
Yeah, 100%. And Cheryl, feel free to jump in here as well, because a lot of our journey is intrinsic, and there's quite a nice segue there. In that, as you've started to talk more about your mental health, others of us have started to do the same. I'll talk about the crossover of mine and Cheryl's work in a bit, but I'll just talk a bit more about my journey first. So I graduated from a healthcare degree. I'd graduated in dentistry, and then everything sort of went downhill from there. And I talk about it in a monologue actually, about how that was the tip of the iceberg, being accused of something within my degree that I hadn't done, and it was based and steeped in racism, and aesthetic, and frankly xenophobia, and all of the phobias and all of the oppression led the people who are running my course to believe something about me that wasn't true, and then for me to start to take on some of those stereotypes and tropes as well. And all the while, I think growing up, I grew up Nigerian, in a Pentecostal Christian household, so you're already dealing with, in a white majority town, so already dealing with issues of tokenism, of performative, or even performative activism then. This is like in the 90s and now early 2000s of, okay, if I don't fit in, do I need to do extra to stand out? How much more do I have to do in order to fit in? All the queer people that I saw on TV were white, especially the prominent ones. So then I'm thinking, wait, is that what it is to be queer? Do I have to be white to be queer? Where do I fit? I'm not really necessarily able to talk about it at home, despite being from a medical background. There's definitely cultural disparity, being from one of the only countries, I guess now, where it's imprisonable but also punishable by death in some of the states in Nigeria to be in a same-gender relationship. So actually, if that's from the top down, on the ground, people are like, this is just not okay. And so there wasn't really a space to talk about any of these issues, let alone all of them at once. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about intersectionality. And that's with good mental health. So imagine that with the stigma of also having low mood and anxiety. So it just becomes all of these things which you're not able to talk about. And artistry and music has always been the one vice that allows people to talk about things that they don't feel able to verbalize. At least you can get it out and you can express yourself. So poetry became my go-to, songwriting became my go-to. Even if it wasn't my own songs at first, I could find joy in myself and be myself under the guise of being a performer, an artist. You get away with so much more on the stage than you could in Tesco and Lido. Although, like, even now I'm thinking, okay, actually some of the stuff I wear on stage I should just take to Aldi on a Tuesday and see how they react. Because we are trying to be more holistic. And I say that facetiously, but it's true. A lot of this stuff is, we've come from a place of not being able to talk about stuff to now being able to talk about it on stage, to now actually living it all at once in totality. And so, yeah, with Pieces of a Man, a lot of that is around our personal experience. We're all very different people. I'm the only queer person, or openly queer person in the band, but everybody's so in solidarity and coalition, and it's really good to be able to talk about these things together. So that's great. And there's been historically, I guess, queer people have been excluded from hip hop and soul, and even that is just starting to change now, which is great. And then on stage, I think my first foray into theatre was this show, officially, Rent Party. In fact, I can share an image of it, I think, so
Yeah,
I
that'd be great.
might do that. So I first encountered Rent Party, which is a show. Cheryl can talk about it a little bit more in a little bit more depth because Cheryl wrote it, but I'll do my best. It's based on the Harlem Renaissance, where black people over in Harlem, over the pond, would run rent parties designed in order for people to earn their rent, and they do this via singing, via dancing, entertainment in order to get that money. And it's hard cash. Like, I need the money to survive. This is now not a case of something I want to do, something that I have to do. This is how I'm going to earn my living. And that was the state of play, because actually there was no other avenues for black people to earn money, like legitimately and securely with stability. But actually everybody knew that black people could entertain, and there's still some of that. It's still awkward in that respect, the commodification of black art, especially when we've had to do it for ourselves historically. So we've taken that idea over to the UK. This is I think it was five of us. Yes, 5 people of colour. The majority of us were LGBTQI, and we all talk about what it is to be a black, broke, beautiful, but oppressed, creative, fiercely, and without any sort of apology. And it's an interactive show, and it's just expanded now. There's more. There's like 4 different shows with 4 different casts. So we were in sort of Rent Party 2.0 a couple of years ago, and we invite the audience on this journey of looking through the politic and the ideological, I guess, viewpoints and beliefs about what it is to be black in white majority, in, I guess, still institutionally and structurally racist Britain. So with a song and a dance. So yeah, it's a beautiful show. There's some really hard hitting stories, and we got really real with it. And it'd be good to talk to you about this, Cheryl, because even now, I've talked about broad strokes of what happened with me and what is happening with me and my mental health and mental illness and well-being. But you said something to me that's really stuck, in that when you get really real with it and very raw, it encourages people to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So the broad strokes are good, but actually it's about getting really specific about what's going on. So it went from, and I'll retract even, or analyze what I've just told you. So retract saying, okay, this was something that happened within my degree. So actually I was accused of being under the influence of marijuana whilst I was treating somebody, which takes it from something that's broad to something that's really real. And that really happened, and it took 2 months to sort out. I didn't actually go to my graduation because I was too traumatized, and that was like the real tip of a long and arduous process of first self-diagnosing, then self-medicating, and then wanting to tap out and not really wanting to do anything. I built my whole life up to try and attain to this standard of what I now know was whiteness, professionalism, and for what gain? Actually, for it to be taken away because of somebody's ignorance. And so I am glad in a way that it did happen, because it opened me up to this whole world of creativity and artistry that I would never have done beforehand. But it's a shame that we have to go and get to crisis and be broken in order to tell a story. I'm glad that that conversation and narrative is changing now. It's really, really necessary, because we know the stats say, okay, even compared to our straight allies, friends and family, queer people have a rougher time with mental health statistically. And even within the LGBTQI communities, white queer people still do better than people of colour. And even when you break it down within people of colour, black people are doing the worst. I think it's something like 50% of people would say they struggle every day or think about something every day. 50% of white queer people, and that raises to 61%. That's a big jump when we're talking about millions of people, of black people, sorry. So yeah, there's definite, even when the numbers tell it, then you know it's real, because actually who have they even asked, and who's been able to have access to such a survey, and those questions that you ask, so you know it must be bad. And we know the reasons why. Like, our country is built on institutional and structural racism, so we know that we've been historically excluded. We don't have the opportunities, and that leads to disparities between our experiences. And so now it's about how we address that and how we talk about it within our own communities, because there's still stigma sometimes within our own communities of colour, but also how we talk about it together with our allies, and work towards a solution where we all get a seat at the table. So yeah, it'd be, sorry, I've also rabbited on, but it's a great subject.
No.
This is exactly why we're here.
Exactly. So, it's just an open conversation, and everything you said, Tolu, there, absolutely 100% agree with. I think it's so well articulated. Cheryl, do you have anything to respond to on that, or do you want to move on to another topic?
Well, I think Tolu covered it really well just now about sort of the specifics of his part during Rent Party. Just to say, someone's asked, I'd love to have more information about this show. All I can say right now is that they're doing new ones. Darren is doing new ones. Tolu, I don't know if you have details about exactly where they are.
Yes.
I was just trying to find them.
Oh, in terms of the, okay,
the ones
I'm gonna say that we'll send stuff to Beth, and then if you're watching on YouTube, in the description there'll be links to where Rent Party is happening. So it was a Manchester-based show that toured around the UK. there's now shows in, I want to say
London,
Wigan,
Battersea,
Peter,
Wales.
Peterborough, Medway, like one in Wales. Like they're
Okay.
everywhere. So there's these casts that are popping up and doing like really localized versions of the show, which is great. And it's just getting people who haven't, especially people who haven't been on stage before, to tell their stories, who are really talented, just might
Yeah.
not have had the um, uh, opportunity to train and do that. So I was really thankful for that kind of step into theatre, 100%.
Well,
Great.
what we found doing it is that people are, sometimes you get from the mainstream that they think that they're, diluting their quality or something by having Black actors, or, they can't find the good ones, or the good ones are all already working. And what I found all along is that we just trip over fantastic talent. So the original Rent Party, which was back in 2017, it got like 5-star reviews from national newspapers all over the place, and as you said, the structure is still going, but just that problem of it was really hard to convince somebody to give us the money, because if you have a cast of 5 people and you want to pay them properly and take them on tour, that takes money, and we didn't get the money that we needed to finish that show until a Black person was working at Crucible Theater in Sheffield, and who was in a high up enough to give us the money to greenlight the project. And it's almost like Black Panther. Until you got a Black producer, in the Marvel universe, you didn't get the all Black cast and the all Black crew that created the marvelous Black Panther. So, when you're thinking about, Tolu is part of Rainbow Noir as well. And as a Black, as a Black lesbian older person, when I came out in Manchester, it was all sort of very white, very white. Canal Street is great, and I'm glad it's there. I lived in Scotland for a while where there was nothing like Canal Street. And I can tell you, when I got back, I appreciated it more, even though it is commercial, et cetera, et cetera. At least it exists.
Yeah.
And you can be in dialogue, you can be protesting against it, but at least it's there, and there's like a center there, if that makes any sense.
100%.
But when I came out, going down Canal Street, if you're with white people, it's not a problem. If you're a group of Black people, you still get what we used to get all the time, was not getting served, people at the door not wanting to let you in, and, just problems because you were a group of Black people. And then they started Rainbow Noir 8 years ago or 9 years ago, too.
It's 8.5 years coming up to 9, and I realized I said I was going to share an image before and I didn't, so let me quickly do that, because I know we've got loads of other stuff to talk about.
While he's sharing, it's like I was around when that started, and I'm telling you, it was such a relief. If you can imagine, okay, everybody knows what the challenges are being, LGBTQIA plus. Oh, that's a great picture.
Yeah.
That was this is from the new place, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a really new picture. Everybody knows what kind of problems or what stresses you can have just by being LGBTQIA plus, and just add on to that. You go on to Grindr or something, and people are saying no fats, no femmes, no Blacks. Just like we're back in the 1950s. Or, you want to have a drink and you're getting, grief, and you can't just do what you want to do. So it's like Rainbow Noir was such a relief, somewhere to go socialize, somewhere to, find loads and loads of other global majority queer people that have the socials, somebody to march with, for Pride. And the last time I was able to march Pride, Tolu brought a sound system along. So we basically danced the whole way. Yeah. And then when we got to the end, we still had our sound system, and it was sunny. And all the people coming off Pride had to pass by us when they came off. And people would join in, like the Gay Gordons, and everybody would just dance a little bit with Rainbow Noir and then go wherever they were going. That was such a great day. And you know, and I'm smiling just talking about it. It is such a relief. And I cannot tell you what a great relief having Rainbow Noir there was. I don't know if you want to tell who is one of the organizers, so he runs it.
So yeah, I'm happy to talk about it 100%, but you've captured it there. It's a space where we can just bring the totality of ourselves. So I'm now just scrolling our Instagram and just kind of like just like remembering loads of stuff that's happened. So this is just me in a day's kind of, and it makes me smile because it's a space where people don't realize they need it until they've had it. If you're in a majority or you don't necessarily stick out in any way, at least visually, but perhaps in any way in your identity, you might not realize the relief and the freedom it is when actually there's loads of people around that are like you and you've not had that before. You build up so many layers when you're, I guess, multiply marginalized, because you're always trying to be one thing or other. Humans are kind of like that. We like to assimilate, essentially, and it's difficult to stick out if you don't want to. And so this is a space where people can come together and not even have to talk about their race or their sexuality. We're not expected to educate anybody. People just get it. And just I guess a side note to say that not everybody's had the same experience as well. There's often this idea, especially through Black History Month and identity-based months, that we've all had the same amount of trauma and we've all had the same oppression. We've all been through the same kind of stigmas, and it's not true, actually. Number one, there's so much to celebrate about being Black, queer, and trans and intersex, or a person of colour and LGBTQI. But also, I know loads of people in this group who've just been fine. And actually, we're getting to the point where, I guess as generations move on, it's like, yeah, I came out and it was great, or I didn't have to come out, or my parents asked me, or even better, it's like, yeah, my parents are also queer, or whatever it is. Like, people have come from very inclusive families because I guess we're moving on and we're on that right side of history, and history is being made. Our activism is our mere existence at times, and it doesn't necessarily need to be any more than that. Yeah, groups like this are great. Holding placards is great. Your social media is great, but even just existing as a person who's been historically excluded is a form of activism, and finding joy in that, I think, is the resistance to it. Quite a lot of our work is around trying to flip this narrative of oppression to celebration. And we can do that through prides, we can do that through awareness months, 100%. It doesn't necessarily stop on October the 1st and start again at LGBT History Month in February. But whilst the world is watching, yeah, of course we're going to take that stage. Cheryl, you know, you said something earlier about taking the money, and it's true. Like, we're going to take the money, we're going to take the space, and we're going to take the coin when it's offered, because that's what we've needed to do. And we're still kind of fighting for that equal seat at the table, but it's not about that. It's about us being together in community. So I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive at all. We can celebrate ourselves during these months that are spotlighted, but I don't turn off being Black or queer on November the 1st, so I'm gonna keep doing it 365 days a year. And unfortunately, I don't turn off my mental health or my mental well-being at that point either. So it's just interesting that these months are focused, but the work shouldn't stop. And I've started talking about seasons now, even at work. I'm extending things to a sort of Black History season, and I know that Hope Manchester are kind of doing the same, and maybe it's about an LGBT month that becomes a season, and eventually it will just be 12 months of the year. where it's just like, and it's just fine, and the whole thing is a season. And because and there's this whole thing about whataboutism as well. Okay, we're talking about this now. What about our physically disabled friends and family? What about classism, which is rife throughout the LGBTQI communities, to be honest? Like, where's working class awareness day or whatever? And it's like, my answer is always kind of who's hurting now, and especially right now are trans people of colour and non-binary friends and family. The analogy I always use is, if I hug you, or even if I've poked you or whatever, and I step on your foot and break it, or I push you down the stairs by accident and break your leg, I'm not going to stand there and be like, number one, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm also not going to say, I've got a runny nose. What about that? I'm going to center the pain. That person's in pain right now, and the people that are in pain right now are actually losing their lives. We talk about people seeking asylum as well and refuge with things going on in Afghanistan. So it's like there's constantly something bigger. We all need to check our privileges 100%. But all we can do is celebrate ourselves as well. So it's a lot to kind of navigate, but I never feel apologetic about celebrating who I am in totality. Nobody should. And I don't think you have to be black or queer or suffer from low mental health to support a cause that is doing the same. If those people are hurting and those people have been forgotten, then maybe it's time to kind of give some kudos to that cause for now. And today, what is it? Today me, today you, tomorrow me. I can't remember which way around it is, but it's like whenever the pain needs to be centered on whatever it is that you're struggling with, or your oppression is, when that is at the forefront, then of course we're going to get behind you and focus on that. But yeah, for now, this is what we do. Oh, I didn't even share. Sorry, I know I've gone on for a little bit. There's another. Rainbow Noir is an umbrella for a number of different projects, and one of them is called House of Noir. So hopefully,
yes, we've also got House of Noir, and just on all these projects that you're speaking to, that Tolu and Cheryl.
Yeah.
Have you found, maybe through the sense of community and the creative basis, has that positively impacted members' mental health?
I think so. I wanted to say that part of the thing about having Rainbow Noir around is people can feel very isolated, or, you know, and then it's not just, there's a line in Rent Party, Black people aren't just for Christmas, we're here all year. And we're not here just for, you know, Black History Month either, we're here all year. And House of Noir, just for people who don't understand, this is Rent Party, which we were talking about earlier.
Right, okay.
That's Stuart, who's lovely, and Lene, and those two are sisters, the two women. But House of Noir is a Vogue battle house. So if people have seen Pose, and you know, you've seen people competing, House of Noir is Rainbow Noir's own Vogue house. And so this is people who may never have danced before, or who've never have walked before. Then they joined here and they walked, and they did very well in their first Vogue ball. And it's just, look at how fabulous everybody looks.
Amazing.
And it's, you know, it's just, imagine, you know, how you feel, the power that you feel. The Vogue balls came out of the 1970s in New York City, and they were a way for people who sometimes had been thrown away by their families, who were sometimes very, very poor, marginalized, sometimes had to make their money through sex work, sometimes, for them to dress up and own it and celebrate themselves. So it's pure Black joy, you know, a proper Vogue ball. And as you can see, these people look wonderful. Imagine if you could dress up like that. And that's part of what Rainbow Noir is doing by just being there. They have socials every month. It's not, you know, a few different, there's a craft day and there's a different kind of day. And it's something that people look forward to every month. And during the pandemic, they were online. That first picture you saw of everybody sitting down on the floor, that was I think last month, the first time people were able to go back in person. And Black Gold Arts as well celebrates Black excellence in the arts. And we never tell people what to do. We just find the best of what they're doing, or give them some money and say, go ahead and do what you want. And then it's always wonderful. Common Word, we were talking about class. Common Word works with refugees, with working class people, including white working class people, and giving them a voice. And again, it's a lot of the people that we platform, like Black Gold Arts, a lot of the people we platform go on to be picked up by the Arts Council, picked up by the Edinburgh Showcase, picked up and taken overseas, and then we can't afford them anymore. But that's the whole point, is to get people to the point where they're so big we can't afford them anymore. Common Word has loads of people who've been picked up by mainstream publishers and, you know, winning prizes, national prizes, et cetera, et cetera. But again, that's the idea, is that we work with people who've never written before, and then we support writers all the way from there to when you are, someone who's won several prizes is coming back to Common Word because she feels that after you've written a few books, nobody gives you any good feedback anymore. So she's going to start an advanced novel writers group. And so we're going to have this big prize winner and these other people. And, you know, it's a nurturing sort of thing. And what that does for your well-being, just, you know, being able to go to a room where everybody smiles when you enter and that everybody welcomes you, being able to walk a Vogue ball in some fantastic looking, you know, thing. It just does miles for your well-being. It would for anyone. And for some people who are, you know, still, yeah, racism still exists. I have to say that I've never been called the N-word except once, I think.
I recall, I think the one time, well, actually, no, many times, but I was going to say my most notable time is the N-bomb and the F-bomb in a portmanteau, as if like there was no time for them to get it out all at once. Is this person in a white van? And I was like, well, props for creativity. It's like, so the interpersonal racism stuff is still a thing, 100%. And especially when you're kind of, I guess, making it intentional that we're going to stick out. So at House of Noir, yes, we do have, I've got to shout out Ken Morris, Anti-Miss Ken Morris, who's Ken Moz Creations. We'll link him in the description as well if you're watching on YouTube. But he's behind the majority of our costume and our fashion at House of Noir. And we put out a little documentary. It was a sort of a pilot really to something perhaps a little bit later that might be more expansive. We're just talking about our experiences during the pandemic and what it's like to be a Vogue collective or a fashion house during a time when we can't actually meet, and what's that doing for our well-being. And it was, we met most weeks for a dance class, because again, none of us are really, only one of us is a trained dancer, and that was back in the day, and the rest of us just wanted to learn, and we just had this hunger. What connects us is our political stance, I guess, and our ideology, and the fact that we're all queer, trans and intersex people of colour. So there was that already connection there in terms of the message that we wanted to put out. But yeah, of course we wanted to learn a little bit more. So Darren Pritchard, who works with Cheryl, would teach us every couple of weeks a new kind of routine. And I took a massive dip, if I'm honest, like at the start of the pandemic, because a lot of my income was just gone in terms of the live performance and session work with other musicality. But there was just this lifeline once a week, once every couple of weeks, where I'd be with people, where I didn't have to perform in terms of my life. I didn't have to try and act any whiter than I needed to. I didn't have to code switch that whole thing around presenting yourself in the way that you think will be more palatable. I didn't have to censor myself. I could talk about my culture and my sexuality and all of those things if I wanted to, and none of those things if I wanted to. And people still got it. So there's something about being able to lay everything you have on the table at once with people who understand and not have to explain it. And that does wonders, I think, for your mental health and well-being. But also the fact that you are encouraged to not only just be who you are, but attain to be the person you want to be. And we find that there's healthy competition within Vogue houses. There's a few dotted across the UK. And I think I've often, I don't know what you think, Cheryl, but I've often seen the perception of even black people, if we talk about black people, where we can be seen as being either abrasive or in competition with each other or trying to one-up each other. And within the community, I've always felt that's around trying to elevate each other. and it's not necessarily about competition, like I'm better than you or I'm doing this because of you, but actually no, I'm going to step up my game because I know that you are too. So like there is something there's something around that as well that I think is just joyous at the end of the day. And yeah, on the night I'm gonna act fierce.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk you down, and I'm gonna want to kind of win whatever sash it is, or trophy, or whatever that is, or dance battle, or cipher if it's a rap battle, whatever it is. That's just how we up each other and we celebrate and elevate each other. And it's just interesting. I guess we don't have to necessarily explain that within our communities. And I guess the last bit about that, in terms of not having to explain stuff, is there's been quite a lot of work artistically that's been geared towards telling black stories, or black within black lives, that has actually been curated by white people and white directors. And the final product is always good, because if you're using black actors who are well crafted in their trade, then they're going to perform well. But in terms of the actual storytelling, it's just really interesting. And me and Cheryl have talked about this. Whereas if you really want to see, if you want to see a black performance, you can see that anywhere black people are performing. But if you want to see a black life, ideally you want a black writer behind that. You want someone black behind the camera. You want someone black curating that story who's had that experience. So I don't think either is wrong. I'm just saying, if you want that authenticity, it's interesting to just really look behind who's written these stories. And you can often tell, I think, because the stories around black people that have been told by white people are often trying to recycle trauma. They call it trauma porn, isn't it? This whole thing about, oh man, this is a story that everyone needs to know because it's traumatic. And it comes even from, like, you know, like Comic Relief or Children in Need, when it's always black and white, and it's always like, do you know what I mean? That whole idea of, like, this is what I think a black life looks like, and this is why you should care. Whereas when we're telling the stories, we're like, actually, being black is great, and it's been, oh, I don't know what the situation is around language, but I'm an adult and we're adults here. So, like, yeah, sometimes sometimes life is really crap, and we've been handed a lot of shit, basically out of our own, that's been out of our circumstance to control. But this is how we deal with it, and this is how we celebrate through it. And I feel like that's what you get when you get a black person writing around a black life. So yeah.
I just want to jump in there, because what we're getting now actually is a really good intersectionality between our LGBT, communities and black communities. Hive North, which is run by a couple of gay white guys, I just directed some new work by them, which had, a number of black writers writing their own life, and that was called Outstage Us. And right now,
Yeah.
Theater, which is run by Nathaniel Hall, who was in It's a Sin, and Chris.
Yeah.
They're having their own new writing, and I'm going to direct a couple more. And one of those is an older black woman writing about a bunch of women her age, or just hanging together, supporting each other. It's called Unapologetic. And I think it's going to be wild. And it's like talking back to those bouncers that won't let them in, but also acknowledging a bit of the pain, but the fact that the sisters are there to, support each other, and queer. This is a queer group of women. And it's like a totally different take on it than the, oh, woe is me sort of that you get a lot of times. And what I was going to say earlier is, like, yes, I've been called the N-word once, but most of the time not. Been talking to some younger people in some of the outer boroughs of Manchester, having a totally different sort of in-your-face experience of racism. But the fact is, you could tell that she was definitely, this was a young woman who was a boxer and very, very strong, but still it was a bit much, the in-your-face racism she was getting on the street. But then this was a common word sort of, thing that she was at. And she was able to tell us, so that we know, no, it's not back in the day, that kind of thing. It has not totally gone away, that kind of thing. That kind of thing is happening right now. But the generations, that's another thing I like about Rainbow Noir. It's like, I'm a lot older than Tolu, very old. And
You would never be able to tell. We both
I,
moisturize well.
but 61, I'm
Shows.
61. But if the generations are there to talk to each other.
100%.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I remember, oh my God, I remember in Commonwealth, there was a conversation, a younger person who was working for us was telling us something that happened at work. And she had never, basically, she called somebody on their racism, a white woman, I'm sorry to say, and that person started crying. And she had been very upset. And we were like, oh, that happens all the time. They're racist to you. And if you actually mention to them that they're being racist, they start crying. And then you're the aggressor. And everybody's been hearing this since last summer. But this was before the pandemic, before, you know, the Black Lives Matter breakthrough to the mainstream last summer. And just the fact that we said, oh no, that happens all the time. And she was like, really? But, you know, that validation, because you get gaslighted, you know, things are happening to you and people say, oh, that can't really be happening. You know, that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. Yes, it does. And you need somebody to acknowledge that your reality is reality.
Valid.
And just, you know, deal with it. But it's like, just, I guess I'm just going back to the well-being thing about talking about your mental health. If you're by yourself being gaslighted and all that, very difficult to maintain, you know, your balance. If you're with other people who can tell you exactly what that is and what the history of it is, and that we've all had to go through that, it just makes a huge difference especially to a young person.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry to interject there, Cheryl, but we are going to have to move on to the questions because time's really run away with us. And we've got a couple of questions that I think I'm just going to group some of them together because they're all asking a similar thing. And I'll just come to Tolu for that question and I'll come to you for the next question, Cheryl, just in mind of time.
No worries.
So yeah, a couple of people have asked about mental health services in the UK. Obviously, you can speak to either your lived experience or what you know of that more broadly, and just sort of navigating that as a queer Black person. Yeah, anything that can be improved around that as well, any problems that you faced with it.
In Manchester, I'm sorry to...
Oh yeah, no, we can both do, but yeah, in Manchester,
there's never any beds. There are never any psychiatric beds if you're in a crisis. It's extremely difficult to access mental health services. Places like, I don't know, Lancashire LGBT, I don't know, but I know that the LGBT Foundation where Tolu works also has mental health services.
Yeah.
And, you know, helplines.
We do.
And I would say that if you're having trouble, you need to go to your GP and you need to really impress on your GP that you need help. I know when I was crashing and burning every summer, and by that I mean that I was having such bad depressions that my GP would call out the crisis team and they would actually come to my house. That's how bad it was.
It's that. It's trying not to, and especially as queer people of colour, whether it's your queerness or your gender identity or it's your race, there's a lot of stigma around mental health and calling out, and there's often a lot of barriers to that, and there's often a resistance to, I guess, authority or institutionalized authority. So when we talk about the police and when we talk about the hospital and the NHS generally, and our government generally, has not been kind to us. But it's true. I would have to support Cheryl in saying, like, at least get your GP on side. But also what I found is that having someone to walk you through that and keep accountable to is helpful. That's not helpful for everybody. I know some people might be on their own. If you are struggling, then and please drop us a message at Rainbow Noir. Please drop LGBT Foundation a message, and we can at least signpost you and get that befriender. But it's really important, I think, to be accountable to somebody. Say, I'm going to make that call today to the GP, and actually we're going to sort it out. And then even when you're talking to your GP, then report back to that person, because if they're not providing for your needs, i.e. I'm a person of colour, I would like to talk to a person of colour about this experience, or I'd like to talk to a queer person, like there's capacity to be able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and the Black LGBTQIA Fund, Therapy Fund is a thing.
Yeah.
NAS Foundation is a thing. Again, we can put some links out.
We can put all these in the description, can't we?
Yeah.
It's really important, because if people are seeing this and struggling, they need somewhere to go to. So I've had 2 more questions come through, so let's just try and whiz through this.
Yeah, let's try.
There's one now. What advice would you give to people who either A, use creativity as catharsis but are stuck in a rut, or B, haven't found their creative outlet yet?
I would say collaboration is my first thing. What about you, Cheryl? What were you going to say in a word?
I would say, again, collaboration. I think finding open mic nights, if you're brave enough to do that.
100%.
Or to find open mic nights are actually it's a community that's there and they're supporting each other. And, you know, it's wonderful when somebody who hasn't read before does start reading, and you can get feedback and you can talk to other writers. Yeah. I would also, you know, look for writers groups where you are.
Yes.
So, because a lot of times they'll be meeting in libraries or something like that. And even online right now, you can, you know, there might be a group in Bristol, and you're in Scotland.
Use that pandemic.
You can go to that. I know a friend of mine in Manchester, a queer woman actually, has been going to all sorts of groups all over the country during the pandemic. So finding a group that, you know, will give you positive feedback and help you grow that's how I became a professional, was because I went to a writers group, a Black writers group at Common Word.
Yeah.
That's how I got all my first work.
Poetry slams, open mics, that's how I cut my teeth. Shout out to Poetry LGBT. So at Poetry LGBT, they're still doing great work online once monthly, run by a queer Black woman called Andrina. So yeah.
And just finally, someone's asked whether either of you are doing any activist intervention in relation to conversion therapy.
Oof, deep question for like the last 3 minutes.
I have to say, I didn't realize that they were still doing conversion therapy in this.
It's huge. So huge movement. Yeah. So in terms of and conversion therapy in all its forms, i.e. not necessarily just structured, we are going to send our child to a camp to be converted and play them and electrocute them and whatever it is, the historical versions of conversion therapy. But the more covert kind of the religious side of it. So that was me, if I'm honest. You know, being prayed over, having the spirit casted out, and all of that stuff is still a kind of a method to try and convert one from one identity to another. And then in terms of the psychotherapy and psychosocial stuff from therapists and counsellors who are, we'd rather the ideal for our child is this, and in schools. So it's just in all of its forms. It's like we just need to ban all of this stuff. To ban conversion therapy, I think, is a hashtag maybe. And in our work, again, it's just for us, it's definitely that joy as resistance. In terms of active support for banning conversion therapy, 100% go to that campaign, is what I would say. And there's so much info on there, and then you'll be able to spot it in all of your forms. And there's personal activism that we can do in our churches, in our community groups, maybe in our talking therapies, to be like, this isn't okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Taylor, for that.
Yeah, okay, so those are the questions. Thank you everyone who asked some questions there, and sorry anyone who had any burning questions we didn't quite have time to ask, but I just want to come to you both now and say, have you got any closing remarks, or essentially where can people find you? Obviously we will make sure we put it all in the description as well.
You can find me at Common Word at cheryl@cultureword.org.uk. Or my Twitter is at Cheryl Alaska. And I have to say, I'm still learning things. And so I'm learning things from what I've been hearing tonight. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah, for me, like everything I do, by the time this is up on YouTube, I should really have updated it, but everything I do is at tolumusic.com. So TOLUMUSIC.com. And that's all my activism, music, all that stuff. And it's in a bit of disarray, but we've just been through a pandemic, so give me a break. So there's that. For those who are online right now, Rainbow Noir is happening in an hour's time. So we meet, it's for queer, trans, and intersex people of colour over 18. We have an in-person meet every second Thursday of the month at the LGBT Plus Centre on Sydney Street, which has just been refurbished. And then we have an online meet. So we meet twice a month now, Cheryl. So this is the fourth Thursday of the month that we're recording this as we speak. So that's tonight. So second Thursday of the month in person, and fourth Thursday of the month online, because we just wanted to keep the joy and connection that we've had during the pandemic. We needed to keep it going. So,
and just to say, don't want to go to their joyful social. And if you're the kind who likes books, Common Word runs Queer Black Book Club, which is also on the fourth Thursday of every month.
There's so much choice. Do it all.
That will be happening in 20 minutes.
Oh, so, maybe you know what? I just thought of this, Cheryl, but I feel like there's an obvious collaboration there.
We need to do a collaboration.
Right.
You can find Queer Black Book Club on Facebook if you look up Common Word Queer Black Book Club.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. You've been absolutely incredible guest speakers, as I knew you would be, but I'm just so glad that everyone's been able to listen to you and hear you. And like I said, when this goes out on YouTube, it'll reach a much bigger audience as well. Just thank you both so much for giving your time, and thank you, Craig, for doing our BSL interpreting.
Thanks so much, Craig.
For monitoring the chat. Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. Take care and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye for now. Bye, everyone.
Bye.